Hello, we're nerds, stalling for time as this actually goes live. Welcome to our quarterly movie night. This month, week, year, we are discussing Hamilton, which recently came to Disney Plus, which was very, very exciting as it was something so many people had wanted to see for such a long time, and it appeared on our screens without us even leaving our houses. So that was pretty cool. As always, with these kind of chats, we're going to start off with some just general ratings and our thoughts, and then we will dive into some discussion. So, Megan, what did you think?
It was great. 5 stars, original cast. I had to watch it in 2 installments because it's so long. So we stopped it at intermission and came back a couple days later. And that was like, oh, you watched all the fun parts. And now it's just sad the rest of the time. But it was really good. I had seen it in Chicago a few years ago and really enjoyed that as well. So it was fun to see it much closer.
And Emma?
Definitely 5 stars. I also watched it in 2 installments. So yeah, we watched the first half one night, and then I think it was a couple nights later we watched the rest of it. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. I think they should do it more often, especially for original casts. Because you can see something on tour or whatever, but it's always special good to see the very first cast, and not everybody can go see it.
Yeah,
even when it's on tour. So I think they should do this more.
Agreed.
I think there's a weird idea that if you put a recording of the show out there, then people won't go see it, won't pay to go see it. But I don't think that's true. The people who would go see it in person are still good, because seeing it live is different than watching it on TV. So
yeah,
the people who would see it live are still going to see it live, even if they've watched a recording.
Yeah, it's my mom took me to go see it, and I know she's going to go see plays, even if she can watch them on her TV too.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with different casts and stuff, people will still go see it.
Yeah. Desiree?
I would give it a 6 out of 5. I have been obsessed with Hamilton since the beginning. I love Hamilton. Unlike everybody else has gone, I watched it all at once, at 1:00 in the morning when it came out. So yes, I very, very much enjoyed it.
Me too. I watched it all in one sitting, and then watched it again a little bit later because my mother is now super obsessed with it because she hadn't seen any of it before. So 5 out of 5 for me as well, but a fellow 6 out of 5 from my mother. I'd listened to the soundtrack in peak Hamilton years and loved it, all of that. But I'm so glad I got to see it with the original cast. This is what I would have chosen. We actually had tickets to see it in Toronto on my husband's birthday, which was March 26th, and then COVID. So that went away. At the time, I was like, oh, well, it's coming to theaters October of next year, which was better than nothing. But this was really, really cool because now I've seen it twice for something I was already paying for.
Yeah.
So were you guys big Hamilton fans before all of this?
Yeah, I think it was right after the soundtrack came out. The original cast recording. It's not a soundtrack, but people get mad when you call it a soundtrack. But yeah, when it was first released and people started talking about it on Twitter a lot, that was when I listened to it. So it was really early on that
I saw people talking on Twitter about it, but then I heard you, Emma, say that you had listened to it, and so then I was like, okay, if Emma liked it, I gotta listen to it.
Yeah, and I listened to it a lot for a couple years. So.
Yeah.
My friend, who's a big musical buff, told me about it way back when it very first the cast recording came out, and I listened to the first song and I listened to the entire album right there, and then I was just absolutely ridiculously Hamill fan forever.
Yeah, I actually only listened to the album all the way through once. And then I listened to my favorites again and again, but because I haven't streamed the movie a bunch of times, I felt like I wanted to save the whole story. I didn't want to overdo that. I wanted to be able to see it eventually. I did listen to a ton of the Hamilton mixtape stuff. There's a couple of those songs I'm obsessed with. But yeah, this was only my second real time story from beginning to end, and it was so much cooler seeing it. And
I kind of wish it had been like that for me. I was telling Desiree and Kelly earlier that like I think I would have like I really enjoyed watching it, and I'm really glad it's out there, and I'll watch it again. But I would have enjoyed it more if it had come out like 2-3 years ago when I was like really into it and listening to it a lot. But at this point, it's like I've listened to it so many times that it's almost like I've watched it a bunch of times. So it was like, oh, it's cool to get to like see the staging of it, but also like it was a little late for me almost.
Yeah.
Mm.
I feel complete opposite.
Yeah.
Like I listened to realistically, I've probably listened to the whole soundtrack maybe 60 times because every time I drove, like for my entire like freshman and sophomore year of college, when I commuted, I only listened to Hamilton and then the mixtape when that came out because I got it for my birthday. And then whenever I go on road trips, like to this day, like still, I just went on a road trip like a couple weeks ago and we listened to the Hamilton soundtrack. So that's what I always do. And now I've seen the recording of it like 6, 7, 8 times. And I love it. Like every time I watch it, I watched it 10 minutes ago. Like I was literally,
That's so nice.
I love Hamilton so much. Like I don't think my love for Hamilton will ever die. If it hasn't died yet, like I don't think it's
Yeah. It has been nice because it has kind of like brought it back for me. Like I hadn't really been listening to it for a while, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is a thing I really love. And like we've listened to the recording a couple times since then. Like we were listening to it this morning because we were like, oh yeah, we haven't listened to this in a while and we love it. So that was nice.
Yeah, it's been fun like having everyone start talking about it again at the same time. It's like Hamilton TikTok has been really cool, kind of like breaking down things I never would have noticed at all. But all of these theater nerd kids who've been obsessing about it for years have all of these really cool facts that make it that much more interesting. So, and of course, people also telling me it's terrible and I'm a bad person for liking it. But
The internet.
Something my fiance said, he was like, if I ever meet someone that says they don't like Hamilton, I automatically don't trust them a little bit. Like I can totally relate to that. What is wrong with you? You don't like Hamilton?
I definitely loved it when it came out. Like everyone else in the Twitterverse, it seemed like. But then I was like, well, I gotta see what else this guy has written. Then it turned me on to In the Heights, and I really, really liked In the Heights. So it was like I listened to Hamilton a lot for a few months and then kind of switched.
Yeah, I really like In the Heights.
I'm really excited for that to come out too.
Yeah, I'm excited for that movie. Is it the same as Hamilton, where like there's no speaking parts and it's all in song?
No.
I'm gonna wait for the movie.
Yeah, I really like the recording of In the Heights, but it was one like a lot of other musicals where I had to like go and like look up the synopsis to understand what was going on. Where like Hamilton, I understood what was going on without having to look it up.
Yeah, because it's literally all there.
Yeah.
I
love In the Heights
with someone, and it was like, is Hamilton technically an opera since there's very like much no speaking? Is it like, could it be considered a hip hop opera?
I don't know.
Hip opera.
Hip opera, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about opera technicalities,
Yeah, about like the definitions of the two. Yeah.
but I'm into it.
Like, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure an opera is like one, like it is a style of music, but also like a story told through song, like only song. So like,
yeah, when I looked it up, the first thing that came up was in a musical, the singing is interspersed with passages of dialogue, while in an opera, the singing never stops, very broadly speaking. So it's kind of like a very broad definition.
Yeah.
So Hamilton's an opera.
It's an opera. Amazing.
It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any like favorite standout moments when you like knew this was a thing you loved? Like what was that thing that made me go, this is fantastic?
The first time?
Generally,
I'd probably say when I heard Aaron Burr. For some reason, like the Aaron Burr started like the second song, like I was obsessed with that song and that song only for like the first like 6 months. I don't know why, but I was obsessed. And I downloaded one of those apps where you could like sing and like your other like vocals would back yourself up. And I downloaded that and spent hours recording myself singing all the parts just because I love that song so much.
Amazing.
That was one of my early favorites as well, and I was like reading through all the like ranking every song in Hamilton. A lot of it had it like really low, and I was obsessed with it. Back when I was dog sitting, we had a dog named Burr, but it was like BRR. It was a weird dog name, but Matt and I got to spend a week going, Mr. Burr, sir.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I know.
Pretty great.
I would say all I remember is like I remember listening to the first song and being like, this is interesting. I don't know. And yeah, like by the end of like the second song, I was like, I'm fully invested in this. Like it was kind of like weird to start to get into. You're like hip hop, opera, American history. Like the American history, I think, is the part that like really kind of throws you and you're like, okay. And then like, yeah, it was like by the end of Aaron Burser, I'm like, I'm here. I'm ready. Like
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, the American history part was what made it so interesting. Like I knew right away I loved the songs, but like once you got to the names of the rap battles, whatever those are called,
Cabinet battles.
Those are the ones. I'm like, this is really smart as well, which is just, it was really very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I love the musical so much is because it's smart. It's just,
Yeah.
and even like the jokes and the humor is a very smart humor, and I like smart humor.
Yeah. There's
Mhm.
just like so much to unpack. I think that was part of why it was able to have like such a big like following online and so much discussion around it and was able to stay big for so long is because you could listen to it over and over again without ever having seen it in person, but you could still like discover something new just by like listening to the lyrics or going online and reading the lyrics. And so like there was a lot to really delve into and not just like, oh, these are like some fun songs that I enjoy and a cool story. But once I've seen it and listened to it a few times and done, it was like one that could really stick with you for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me, multiple times while like listening or watching it, I have always been struck like really hard by both Wait For It and The Room Where It Happens, because from a characterization standpoint, it does such a really, really good job of like, oh, we always talk about in storytelling, like make sure that readers know who your character is, like what they want, what they're afraid of, and like Wait For It and The Room Where It Happens both pretty explicitly spell it out in a way that you're like, oh, I sympathize with this character a lot. This like fear that you're going too slow, but you think you're doing the right thing, combined with his just like, I've hit the midpoint. My new arc is like, I gotta get in there. Like I gotta be where things are happening. And so both of those, I think for me are always like, this is really good, really well thought out.
The characterization like of everyone is really good.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like there were so many debates about like, because it was a fairly like current piece for its time, and then now the conversation is very different in the States. So a lot of people were like talking about how it's glorifying slave owners and all of that, and so just the way they handle a lot of the characterization was very interesting, but because I don't think a lot of them were actually like, I didn't feel like the show made them seem like good people necessarily, just very complicated people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I saw like a take on Twitter or somewhere that was like saying that the show like romanticizes and like puts Jefferson in a good light, and I was like,
Where?
have you watched the same show as me? And I thought it was really interesting though, because it was like when it came out, it was revolutionary in a lot of ways in the way it showed Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson is taught as just like full-on hero in like US history and like high school classes and stuff. You're like, Thomas Jefferson, he's amazing, like founder of our country. And so it was really revolutionary to have something that like kind of turned him into a joke. And made him like the laughing stock in a lot of ways of the story and showed him in not a great light. And so it was like really revolutionary then, but like now it's like turned a little bit into people being like, oh, it makes you kind of like, because I think the person was like, oh, I was really uncomfortable that like he made me laugh and stuff. And it's like, that was kind of the point, was that like you were laughing at him instead of revering him like you were taught to growing up. So it's interesting to see like the conversation turn in that way.
yeah. It's super interesting for me to hear. Like, of course, this is the first one in a long time where the word nerds, the Americans, actually outnumber the Canadians. It hasn't happened in a while.
Rachel is just like, I'm not watching this. I don't have time.
Yeah. So I didn't have that same kind of didn't learn that much about America. I knew we burnt down the White House in 1812, so that was a thing. But
the War of 1812, there was no winner of that war. That's what we're taught in American schools.
So yeah, I had like a very broad picture because like obviously everyone knows some level of American history because you guys are kind of everywhere. But I couldn't have told you the specifics of any one of the founding fathers at all. Like until Hamilton, I keep getting like Lincoln or Washington, which one did which thing? Like I know they're both very important, but so this was different for me than you guys, I'm sure, because I didn't have a lot of background.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. And I think too, with what you're saying about Thomas Jefferson, it's like the character is very much written as like a joke. And I'm sure there is like definitely a conversation to be had about like it started these conversations, but we do need to be past like, oh, he was like more than a joke. He was like not a great person. But like going back to like 2015 or whatever, it was like he was a joke, but also Daveed Diggs is very charismatic.
Yeah.
And so you like see that and it's
wonderful.
Like, so charismatic that I want to like you no matter what because like the actor is so good.
Yeah.
And I think that's like also important for that character because it's like he was not a great person, but like there's a reason that he's like revered in history and like he was well liked and all these things, you know. And so like kind of like looking at that as like someone can be charismatic and well liked and not be a great person and do like terrible things. But yeah, I mean, like, who is not attracted to Daveed Diggs? So like, it makes it a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
I just think like every time I see like What Did I Miss, like, which is like my new favorite. It was never my favorite song, but after seeing it, it is like my new favorite. I just see Daveed Diggs. Like that's all I can see. It's just him and his beautiful flouncy hair that I want so badly. But like I love that song so much. Like I was like talking about like when I get back into musical theater, like after COVID, like, you know, hopefully disperses, you know, soon. And when theaters are like actually performing again, that's like my new like audition song because it's just such a very charismatic piece, which is really, really good for musical theater. And I'm just obsessed with it.
Yeah. We've got some people in the comments. We've got N. Griswold and ATW 2006 here. Thanks for being here and commenting. ATW 2006 said the soundtrack is my writing jam, and I've tried to watch the show while writing, but it's a bit more distracting that way. And Griswold said, I also gave it 5 stars. I saw it 2 years ago when it came to my city, and streaming it was just as good as watching it live. ATW 2006 also said, my dogs hate ladies singing, and I've listened to Hamilton enough that she has memorized when to leave before the ladies come in.
That's so funny. I think it's really interesting too, like talking about Daveed Diggs and the cast. Like I think part of what, like I said, I would love to have more Broadway recordings available online with like original casts. But I think this one's really interesting and like needed to be online because there was like so much celebrity around the cast, which doesn't happen with every musical. Like I really feel like it hasn't really happened, especially for like not like super deep theater nerds. Like this was the first one since maybe like Wicked. Like I know like Wicked, like really celebrity cast, people like know them by name. But even then it's only like maybe the 2 leads that people really know the names of. Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. Where this, it's like everyone knows like all of the original cast. And so putting it out there so people could actually see that cast, I think was great because like you can see it on tour in other cities and it's still gonna be amazing, but it's not gonna be that same experience as like Daveed Diggs. Like some of those raps were written for him. And like a lot of these songs were written for that original cast. So you like kind of need to see it with them in a way.
Fun random traveling cast fact, when I saw it, it was Emmy Raver Lampman was in the ensemble, so she's one of the stars of the Umbrella Academy now.
Oh, nice.
That's so cool.
I just learned that like recently. unfortunately. And I was like, what? Flipping back.
It's supposed to be coming to Denver. Well, it's supposed to come in 2020, but you know that didn't happen. But it's the tour is still supposed to come to Denver, and I'm still gonna try to go see it. Like I want to see it live still too. So like to your guys' point, we were saying like people who are gonna see live theater are going to see it still. Like live theater is an experience, not it's not just something to watch.
Yeah, it's like this might reduce the amount of just like super casual people seeing it, like Hamilton, it was kind of like you have to see it if you're in New York kind of thing. So like maybe like less people see it because of that, but in a way that's like good because it'll just make it so it's a little bit more accessible. Because it was at its height, it was at a point where it was like impossible to get tickets unless you could pay scalpers a ton of money.
Or you won the Hamilton lottery, which I tried.
Yeah. So actually like reducing that a little bit actually might be a good thing.
Yeah. And like how many shows are there per decade that happens?
Exactly. Yeah. Where like for other shows, it's just going to expose people to it so they'll know it exists so that they're more likely to see it if it comes to their city or if they're in New York or something.
And it would have been interesting to see how it played out because I suspect the Disney Plus deal happened because of the pandemic, whereas if it had just gone to theaters, seeing what kind of numbers it would have done. And then it might have, like, especially for shows that weren't Hamilton levels of big, that might have been a better option, like having both available.
Yeah.
I get that it's Disney and that Disney has rules about what can be on Disney Plus. But part of me is like, why did you buy it, Disney, if you were going to have to censor it? And then Lin-Manuel Miranda was tweeting about how, I got to keep one of the F-words and you didn't keep either of my two favorites.
I don't understand why they chose the one they chose. I'm like, that's no one's favorite one. Like, no one cares about that one. The other two are like way more popular. But and I do know it wasn't just a Disney thing. It was like Lin has talked specifically about how like he wanted it to be PG-13 so it'd be more accessible. So I think they probably would have done it if it had been in theaters too, just so it wouldn't have been rated R, which is lame that you can't have 3 fucks and have it be PG-13. Like it's literally just the number of times a specific word is said makes something R, which is stupid.
And you would think like if Netflix had bought it instead or something, like you can have the option to have both versions. If you want a PG-13 one, here you go.
That's what they did for the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. When they played it on ESPN, you could choose to watch it edited or not.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. But
it'd be nice if they eventually released an unedited version for people who want that.
And this is going to open the doors to explore more of those options as like we get more theater in streaming and theaters, and we get to like play with how do we do this in a way that makes sense for everybody. But I'm glad we're headed in that direction now, because I wonder how many of like shows that have been out forever have those original cast recordings. Obviously nothing like this where they knew it was going to be broadcast in a way like this where they have the different camera angles and stuff. Like I thought at first this was just going to be straight on like someone sitting in the audience recording on YouTube kind of angle.
Not just with a nicer camera.
Those, but they might exist.
Not that I have one of those on a DVD or anything.
Not that they haven't like spliced multiple shows together to get in that.
Well, I didn't realize until like afterwards when Lin was tweeting about it that it's actually like 3 or 4 different days that they filmed it over. Like it's not just one performance. So they did like one performance that was just like a camera in the audience filming or whatever, so they get like the audience reactions. But then they also did like a couple days of just like them in the theater, like doing close-ups and like redoing songs over and over again to like get all the different angles. So
it was beautiful. It was very worth it.
Very well done. But yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of shows, especially the really big ones, have a recording somewhere in the vault that they made while the cast was still there, just to have it,
And like you guys said, I think Wicked is the only one where I'd care about like having that cast. The rest of them I'd just like to watch. So
and I'm like, there's got to be a recording of Wicked out there somewhere.
It used to be on YouTube. I saw it. Like I found a bootleg copy on YouTube when I was like in like my sophomore year of high school or something.
Yeah, I watched from a long time ago.
It's like high school marching bands make recordings because they know the families are gonna want them. Like there's like super high production ones have them too.
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be interesting to see if like now with the In the Heights movie coming, all of that's like delayed a year now, if they have those recordings and they like do the movie first and play with, okay, so then how many people watch a streaming version of the show if there's already the movie, and like let audiences prove that there's the market for it, and hopefully then we'd start to see more of that deliberately produced.
Yeah.
One of my favorite details that you don't get from listening to it and then like seeing it, I was pretty far back, so I didn't notice it when watching, was when Hamilton is trying to like make the decision to tell these guys that he hasn't been speculating, he had an affair, and you see that Ryan Reynolds is just standing in the back of the stage just staring at him. I was like, that is horror movie.
Yeah. And a lot like in like the Reynolds pamphlet and everything, like having King George there, like you don't know that just listening to it.
Yes,
so good.
great.
I love Jonathan Groff like a lot, and so like that just made everything like just so much better.
Yeah, he was wonderful, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in it, where there's like a character like in the wings or up on the balcony or something, like watching something happen, and you don't get that when you listen, so it was cool to see.
Yeah, or in the Reynolds pamphlet when they pull Philip up to the front and you like see him head on as he's reading it.
Well, even just the stuff about, because I didn't dig that much in when I listened to the cast recording the first time, of like knowing who played who in the first half and the second half of like so I died for him and all of those things, of like the double meanings with all of those people. So like I loved him, Peggy didn't love him, I don't understand that. Now I kind of understand that. Those kind of things where I would never have like actually taken the time to figure that all out on my own.
Yeah, I really like the I fought with him one, because it's like two of the like in the first half they're like fighting by his side, and then the other half they're fighting against him. So like the double meaning there is really cool.
So clever. I love clever things.
There's so much good like word playing and like clever.
Or even just the more subtle of like the cast, the ensemble member who carried the bullet between Burr and Hamilton, of like she died early on, and then like she's playing all of these kind of death-related characters. Yeah, it's really neat.
There's an
I never would have seen
that.
TikTok taught me. I don't know.
Yeah, she's the one who like came up with that. Ariana DeBose. Like it wasn't originally in like the choreography or the script or anything. Like she had the idea and started doing it.
I remember I had a question for you guys. So I know everyone usually has a favorite song. Did your favorite song change from listening to the soundtrack versus watching it on Disney?
Like definitely listening to the soundtrack, I know like my favorite song is Wait for It. And I still love it watching it, but it's probably not my favorite to watch, just because like there's not really anything going on in that one. Like it's a beautiful song and it needs to be staged the way it's staged, with just like him there singing it. But like getting to see it, things like What Did I Miss is like really fun to watch. The Reynolds pamphlet was like really cool to watch. So like when you get to see the staging, I don't know, like, there's other songs that I enjoy the staging of more, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I have multiple favorites. Like I had like Act 1 favorites and I had Act 2 favorites, because like they're different to me. Like I had to separate them.
Oh, and of course like Helpless and Satisfied.
Oh,
which
iconic.
Ingrid Rod mentioned, but like getting to watch those, like they're really cool to listen to. Like the way he like wrote them, but then also getting to see the way they're staged, like it like reinforces the like genius behind the writing of the
way
songs.
Satisfied is staged is probably like my favorite moment in the show. I want to say, like, there's a reason it was like the clip they released ahead of time of just like a minute into that song, because it's so cool.
So cool.
And I know like Lynn said, like when he was like tweeting about it, that like it's like the best thing he's ever written, and he doesn't know if he'll ever top it, because it's like the smartest thing he's ever written.
That is fair.
That would make me anxious. Like, I would have to end my career. Be like, I'm done. That's it.
So we kind of talked about characterization a little bit, but it's something I feel like you could dig into for a long time. Does anyone have any like favorite character arcs, or just favorite character, whatever's easier? But because I could talk about Aaron Burr forever.
Yeah, I love Aaron
Do a
Burr's
whole
character
chapter
arc.
just on him.
It's like I love Angelica just because she's Angelica, but like Aaron Burr's like character arc is my favorite character arc.
Because like him and Hamilton, like watching the two of them together and the differences and like their wants and stuff. It's just such a, you never get to see that in books of those, like, it's not as obvious in books of like, this is what I want. This is what I want. So getting to see the two of them juxtaposed against each other is just very cool.
Because like in a musical, one of the things you have is an I Want song. Like it's an important part of the musical. So, and Hamilton's is My Shot. And Burr's is probably Wait for It. Or The Room Where It Happens, I'm not sure. Probably Wait for It, because it has to be earlier in the musical. But his one kind of changes.
It kind of feels like, yeah, The Room Where It Happens is like, this is the new one. And that's where he really starts like stepping out a lot more, which kind of leads to the end of his character arc.
Yeah. And I think like his want is kind of always there of like, he does want like a legacy and wants to like be a part of things, but it's like what he's willing to do for the want changes as he goes. And I think one of the really cool things about it is how at the end, like you have these two characters who like are similar in a lot of ways, but like the things they're willing to do are different. And like the way they approach life is different. And like at the end, when they kind of both have their downfall, it's because like they kind of switch places. It's like,
the antagonist switch.
Yeah. Because it's like for like the first time in his life, Hamilton is like cautious about something and doesn't just like go headlong into it. And he like raises his gun and doesn't shoot. And for once, like Burr actually goes for something and like does the impulsive thing. And it like ruins both of them.
Yeah. I am also a really big fan of Eliza's arc. I feel like watching it is even more. I don't remember if you can actually hear. I never noticed on the cast recording her like saying, "Will you tell my story?" at the end over everyone else saying, really? "Tell your story" or whatever. And so that was like, it was like, I'm kind of glad I didn't notice it because it was like oh dang. Even I've been like in my head sidelining this character who's like, wait a minute, I've been dealing with just as much complexity as all of these people.
Yeah, like she definitely starts off in a kind of expected trope light of what she wants and what you kind of think she's going to be, and then kind of seeing, and because she was a real person and seeing how her story unfolded, and then getting to see the end scene where she kind of learns how her story is being shared and stuff. Because it's history, it's so much more interesting than just, oh, this was a musical. Interpreting these characters.
I learned like I had to Google it because I was interested, I was curious. But Eliza in like real life, she lived to be like 97.
Yeah. She died like a year or two before the Civil War.
Wow.
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. It was like 1960 or 1860 or something. It was like right
1960.
1860.
He's like, I lived to the civil rights movement.
Eliza's actually just like manipulating all of history.
Yeah.
She's still alive.
She's the one who tells everyone's story.
Yes.
It is really cool because like, you know, the musical is called Hamilton, and in most ways it is Alexander Hamilton's story, but in a lot of ways it's like Eliza's story too. And like because like while in school in America, like you don't learn quite as much about Hamilton as you do from the musical, of course. Like, you know, kind of who he is. Like it's always like kind of the thing you like always know is like, oh yeah, he's the one who's on money but wasn't a president, but you always think he's a president, but he wasn't. So like, you know, some things about him, I've heard of him, but like you haven't ever heard of his wife until this musical. And so like in a lot of ways, like this musical is like what pulled her like into the spotlight, which is cool. So and made sure her story was told.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of just interesting as like again, it's not having that American history background. Of just like the story of America. And I know like it's all very romanticized and simplified for sure, but like the Room Where It Happened of like, okay, this is the capital, but this is where the banks are, and those shifts of power, and like who the players were in going from the war to actually founding a country is really neat. That it made me want to learn more about it, but there's nothing out there that's going to live up to that level of making it interesting. So
yeah, because I mean, the history's not a constructed story. So it's like,
Yeah.
one of the things that I was really interested in was the difference in like how people portrayed characters after having played them for a while versus when they recorded the cast recording. Because I'm pretty sure they did the video recording towards the tail end, right?
Yeah, it was right before people started to leave.
Yeah, so like I particularly noticed it with the guy who played Hercules Mulligan, Okediete Onaudawan was his name, I believe.
He goes by Oak. I know that.
I was like, I just know him as Oak.
Yeah.
I was like looking at the cast list before this. I was like, I gotta refresh on everyone's name. But on the cast recording, like he's obviously still like gruff and stuff, but he sounded a lot like artists like Ja Rule and stuff in like the actual play, which I really liked. And then even like Lafayette, like just how hard he went on the French accent. I was just like, how are you speaking so fast while going so hard on that accent?
Yeah, it is interesting like how I also think there's just like also a difference in how you perform a song when you're just like recording it in a studio versus when you're like on stage playing the character. Like recording in a studio, you're never going to be able to capture the same amount of like inflection as you do when you're actually like on stage performing. So I think that makes a difference too. Where especially Lafayette, like especially Daveed Diggs in general, I felt like I love him in the cast recording, but like it felt even more like alive almost, like getting to actually see him do it. Because I feel like he was more just kind of like singing the songs for the cast recording where you got like more of the character.
Although on the Oak, whatever his name is, and seeing them for the first time, for me the weird thing was that actor is now on Station 19, which is a Grey's Anatomy spinoff, and I've watched him on that for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden he's Hercules Mulligan, and it was very confusing.
I also like from the cast recording didn't like catch all of the whole like James Madison apparently was like sick all the time. He was always like coughing and stuff. Like you don't really get that in the cast recording.
I had a bit of a similar experience because I have a toddler and Daveed Diggs is on many episodes of Sesame Street. And he's like Mr. Noodle's nephew or something.
Oh, that's so cute. I didn't know that.
I saw him on Blackish. He was on Blackish.
Yeah, I knew that. I love him on Blackish.
Yeah.
Kimmy Schmidt, right?
I forgot he was in Kimmy Schmidt. Yeah.
And now I can't wait to see all of these actors who were very popular in the Broadway world, but now are so mainstream, to see what they're going to get to do next, because they're so fantastic. And I'm sure they've also gotten a bit more of a push from being on the original cast of Hamilton than they might have otherwise anyway to get that opportunity. But you're going to see them in a lot now, which is great.
Although the sad thing is I remember like around the time that Leslie Odom Jr. like left Hamilton and everything, he like released his album. He like talked about how like even with Hamilton, it was still difficult for him to like find like Broadway roles because there's just so little for Black men on Broadway. Which is stupid.
More mainstream stuff.
There's so many musicals where like really anybody could be cast in any role, where it's like you really have no excuse to be like even like Les Mis, like seriously, just they don't have to be white. I don't care.
I've known about the racial elements of the casting through all of it, but seeing it and seeing so many women in the ensemble getting to play soldiers and stuff, which you never get to see, was really cool as well. It's just like, oh, we never get to do that.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Des?
Probably, I forgot. I'm really tired, so my brain is like a second behind everything, so it just takes a second to catch up.
Yeah, same.
I think it's like revealing that like a lot of the cast haven't really done a lot of Broadway post Hamilton. Like they've moved into like TV or film because there's just more opportunities for them there.
Yeah, theater is secretly a hotbed of racism, if you guys didn't know.
Yeah.
I learned that like in high school, which was unfortunate, but like theater more so than like even other aspects of media, which is really sad because theater is amazing and I feel like it should be accessible to everyone because everyone's story deserves to be told, like, you know. But one of the things I love about Hamilton, like more than anything is the fact that Lin-Manuel decided to cast the way that he did, because it was like an article I think I read like way back when I was really obsessed. He said like he wanted the cast to reflect how Americans look today. And I really, really like that. And he also proved that you really can cast anybody like in a role. Like look at how many talented people, like an incredibly ridiculous amount of talented people on one stage that would not have gotten the chance if it had not been for, you know, Hamilton, which is like insane to me. It's crazy. And if you think about how many people still aren't discovered that are, you know, people of color who've been trying to, it's just like kind of infuriating thinking about like how many people don't get the opportunity that they deserve because, you know.
Oh yeah, because their only option was like The Lion King.
Yeah, it's literally like Lion King and Cats was like it.
Which, yeah, I think is really silly because I don't know, there's something about musicals where like I feel like with like TV and movies, you expect like an element of like realism in your cast. Like family members should like look like they could actually be family. And I mean, although, you know, not everything's biological family, so whatever, you can still have whoever you want. But, you know, like people expect characters to like look a certain way based on who they are kind of thing. But like, there's something about musical theater it's an art form and it's very artsy where like Hamilton, you could cast anybody, like the Brandy Cinderella, or like I think he has a black mom and a white dad and he's Asian. Like who cares?
Yeah.
So
yeah. My sister did have a moment after it was all over of like, so did they adopt Angelica? Like she didn't understand why Angelica was black, but she didn't catch that the other two weren't white. So I don't know.
The other two were Asian and black.
We had a comment from ATW 2006 who mentioned, I also think it was powerful to have POC in a play about a rebellion because too often in our culture, people celebrate protest from anyone but people of color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely true.
Yes. Very true.
Yeah, and like I did see a lot of, you know, the debate putting like the Black Lives Matter stuff that's happening now against when Hamilton came out and stuff, but people also supporting it in that like getting to see people of color who made up America kind of celebrate the American dream, like what it was meant to be, what America was built for, rather than just having white people tell those stories all the time, was really nice.
And then I do think there were definitely a lot of metaphors regarding the fact that like the American dream was set up systemically to kind of screw up a lot of people's lives. I wouldn't have hated if it had been a little more overt, you know, like the one I've read the most about is John Lawrence is trying to start his first like battalion made up of all black men, and George Washington is like up there and he's like, yeah, not yet. And that's like supposed to be a metaphor for how like George Washington blocked a lot of the stuff that would have made America more free.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have hated if we had delved a little deeper into that, but it also like went so deep into so many things.
Yeah.
Like there's so much more like text packed into this musical than like any other musical because the words per minute are insane.
I will say, so like what everyone was saying, like, oh, when Hamilton came out, like we said, like it came, the film of it came out at a very different time than the original came out. And so I definitely dismiss a lot of criticism for that because like a lot of people don't understand how like different this already was, you know? But the only thing that I ever had a problem with Hamilton is how they really tried to imply that the North was always against slavery, and that is very incorrect.
Yeah.
And it came up a couple of times, and I was like, I get it, but also no.
It's like very typical like Northeastern US attitude of like, oh, we were never the problem. It's like we definitely were. Yeah, I do think because kind of like I said, like I think Jefferson, like it was revolutionary the way he was portrayed because like he was kind of like a joke and not revered in the same way he normally is in U.S. history. But like one thing I would have liked to see different would have been like a slightly more critical look at George Washington, because I do think it does kind of like still put George Washington very much on a pedestal.
I felt like he was probably the only one that was fully on a pedestal through Hamilton. Like, apparently there's a moment where like when Eliza's talking about slavery, he looks shameful, but his characterization through the whole thing was this
very
legendary
proud.
hero.
Like,
Yeah.
a man who like had his slaves' teeth pulled.
Right. I would like that is always in the back of my mind when I watch Hamilton. Like,
and I didn't learn that until like probably like 6 years ago or something, like 5 years ago maybe. Like you're not ever taught that.
yeah, his teeth aren't made of wood.
Yeah.
But I always think about that. But like my manager that at my first job, she went to school with Chris Jackson, which I always think is cool. So I'm always like, oh, that's really cool. But I also have that like Washington fact in the back of my mind. So my brain is always very conflicted during Washington songs.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting. There was that like kind of like documentary thing that they released a few years ago, where they talked about like the making of Hamilton and everything, and like he goes and visits whatever Washington's home is called. I can't remember the name. All I can think was Monticello, but that's Jefferson. But anyway, Mount Vernon. He like visited Mount Vernon, and he talks about like his complicated feelings of like playing this character, who like is like really respected and revered in U.S. history, but also owned people who look like him. You know.
And
So
he
that was
does
really
play him
interesting.
so well. Like he really brought across. Like it's because he played him so heroically and wonderfully that he seems like the only not flawed character in that whole show. So
yeah, it like would like it's interesting to think like how the show maybe would have been different if it was written today versus like 10 years ago when he was writing it. And I wonder now if he would have made the decision to cut the cabinet battle about slavery. Like I feel like if you were writing it today, you maybe be more likely to keep that cabinet battle in instead of cutting
I think
it.
he would. Like, which I love that cabinet battle on the mixtape. But like I know just like recently as a couple months ago, like Lin-Manuel was like under fire for like, which I don't necessarily agree with like why he was under fire, but like because of like his lack, like his silence during like the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that. So I feel like if it were written today, he probably would leave it in. I think everyone should go listen to it if you haven't heard it, just because it's really entertaining, and I love listening to all the unknown Hamilton songs. But I think it would have been definitely interesting.
it's just it's so strange, like the times changing and trying to look at it through both lenses of even just like before the disaster of 2020 of like it coming out in Obama years and like looking at this what America's going to be, and then watching this in the Trump years of like, oh, this is what we're fighting for.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a wonderful show.
I am definitely interested to see like what the future of Broadway looks like, because I feel like 2020 kind of hit at around the time when we would start seeing some like cool new stuff popping up. Not that we haven't had cool new stuff since Hamilton, but
I feel like the first musical that I've really gotten excited about post Hamilton was Hadestown. Like there were other ones that I like enjoyed and like listened to like a couple times and I was like, oh, this is good. But like Hadestown was the first one that I like really was getting into, and then it was like going to come on tour to Orlando, and now who knows what will happen. But and that one does have like a more diverse cast than some previous.
I've heard such good things about it, but I haven't listened to it because for me, it's always felt like, oh, I'm never going to get to watch it. There's not that many musical recordings that I listen to, and like Toronto gets shows, but just not all of them. So you really have to be one of the big ones for there to really be a chance I'm going to see it. And like, if I'm never going to get that full perspective, I don't want to like get too attached to it. So if
for
things
me, it was
change, I know we'll get to watch it on Disney Plus or whatever. I would be listening to all of them all the time.
It's interesting because for me, like I grew up like never going to see musicals because like it wasn't something we could afford. And a lot of, I mean, some of my growing up years, we lived in big cities, but some lived in small towns. And so like, I like never got to see musicals unless it was like a small, like school performance. And so for me, like cast recordings were like my access to musicals. Like it was all I had. And so I would like listen to them and then like go read a synopsis of what was happening. Cause I was like, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to like getting to see this. Yeah. So it's interesting. Like I don't know how like for some people it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to get into it cause I can't watch it. And some people it's like, well, this is all I have.
Yeah, I don't know why my brain never went just like read a synopsis, but it's that like missing pieces of like when I'm listening to it, I'm never going to understand the context.
Yeah. I know you're not alone. I know there's like other people who like I knew people back when Hamilton was when it was really big that were like, I'm not going to listen to it because like like I don't want to listen to it unless I'm going to see it, basically. So
Yeah. For me, Hamilton was different because
it's all there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. One. Oh God.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm very tired.
Well, we are going to wrap up shortly, so if anyone has any kind of final thoughts or anything, now is the time.
Oh, I do remember what I was going to say. So I know we were talking about Hamilton, but if you could pick any musical what to come to like a Disney Plus type of viewing performance, what musical would you pick? I'll go first to give you guys time to think. I want to see Avenue Q so bad. Like that, I was obsessed with Avenue Q. Like in like high school, we watched a documentary about Wicked, Avenue Q, and there was the Boy George musical. I can't remember what it's called, but they all came out in the same year. So there was a documentary about it, and I fell in love. I was obsessed, and it's hilarious, and I want to see it very badly.
See, for me, the one like not the same treatment as Hamilton. I've always wanted the Wicked movie. Like translating that to a more traditional movie type plot, I think would be really, really fun. Just because like The Wizard of Oz is such a staple of movies, so being able to like do that in a non-Broadway way, but with the same music, is something I've always like. Is there any IMDb news on this happening? Because I need this.
As I say, for years they've been like, it's gonna happen, and then
it's insane that it hasn't. Like, it is insanity that this has not happened yet. Like, that's crazy.
Like currently, I would probably say Hadestown. Like, I really want to see it staged, but it's one that I don't care quite as much about. Like seeing the original cast. Like, I feel like I could see anybody, and I'd be like fine with it. Although Hades' voice is really great in the original cast, but because he has this like really deep gravelly voice that I feel like not many people can replicate, but so that one would be cool. And other than that, like, I mean, I'm really excited for In the Heights, and I would love to see like an actual like recording of the stage musical because I love that one a lot.
Yeah. Mamma Mia. It was the first musical I ever saw, and it's just so chaos that like I want to be able to access that chaos again.
So I'm very, very lucky and privileged and all of that because I have seen that on Broadway, and my like favorite New York moment is like there's this very gay usher dancing in the aisles as they're doing the final number, and it was just wonderful.
I saw it on Broadway. Maybe we were there together.
I don't remember when that was, but I like those ones. I love the movies as well, and like that would definitely never stop me from like having seen that on Broadway. But I also just really love ABBA music, so
yeah, it's like I've seen like the Phantom of the Opera movie. I watched it a million times in middle school, but I still like went and saw the play.
Yeah,
when I was like 19. So
yeah, I've also never seen any of like classics like Beauty and the Beast or something, you know, like that would be fun to see in stage format.
I did finally see The Lion King last summer, and that was really cool.
Yes.
It'd be cool to have access to.
I saw that as a kid. But for me, The Lion King, my memories of it are like all of the animals coming down the aisle. So that was a very like, unless you're seeing it in the theater, it's not quite the same experience.
We had aisle seats. I made sure to get them just for that.
I know what's coming. The one TikToks we do want to see is 6 about the wives of Henry VIII. Which I don't know much about it beyond the ones that have been TikTok songs, but I'm a big Henry VIII history nerd, so getting to see those stories told in a musical form has always been something I've wanted to do. So, alrighty. That is it for us today. We are going to be back next week with our chat on social media and the writing world of what platforms you need to be on and why and what's the point of all of it and how to do it well and should you just avoid the whole thing. We'll see. We've got opinions. So we would love to see you all then on Sunday at our usual time. And of course,
Thursday, right in Thursday.
Yes. I was going to say we have videos on Tuesday and Thursday, but we don't. We have a video on Tuesday and a write-in on Thursday. We're going to be doing that. You say noon?
Noon Eastern, I think.
Okay, so noon Eastern-ish, give or take. Megan changing her mind. will be another live weekday write-in because we had so much fun doing the write-a-thon with Tamara Woods this week. So hopefully we'll be doing more of those weekday write-ins for not those of you guys who are watching right now who can't be there on Sundays, but other people. So hopefully we'll see you all then. Video on Tuesday, and until that, have a wonderful week. Bye.
Bye.